The first time my neighbor caught me staring from my yard, I was certain I had just ruined the only peaceful place left in my life. My heart pounded as I froze where I stood, embarrassed beyond words. I expected an angry glare, a complaint, or a warning to stay away. Instead, the elderly woman slowly smiled, looked directly into my eyes, and quietly said, "If you want to see, just ask." In that single unexpected moment, something inside me shifted. I had no idea that the simple invitation I almost refused would uncover a story of love, grief, forgiveness, and a friendship that would change both of our lives forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can heal broken hearts and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Kind Heart Stories. Your support helps these meaningful stories reach people who may need hope today. I had lived next door to Mrs. Eleanor for nearly 2 years, yet we had barely exchanged more than a polite wave. Everyone in the neighborhood respected her, but very few actually knew her. She lived alone in a beautiful old house surrounded by the most breathtaking garden I had ever seen. Every morning before sunrise, she worked quietly among colorful flowers, carefully trimming roses, watering lilies, and whispering to tiny seedlings as though they could understand every word she spoke. The garden seemed almost magical, changing with every season yet always somehow more beautiful than before. From my own backyard, I often found myself watching that peaceful little world. It wasn't because I wanted to invade her privacy. The truth was much simpler and much sadder. My own life had become painfully empty. After losing my wife to a sudden illness 18 months earlier, every day felt heavier than the one before. Our home echoed with silence. The laughter that once filled every room had disappeared, replaced by routines that barely kept me moving forward. Looking at Mrs. Eleanor's garden became the closest thing I had to feeling alive again. The blooming flowers reminded me that beauty still existed somewhere, even if I could no longer feel it inside myself. Still, I knew it probably looked strange. Day after day, I stood quietly by the fence, pretending to check my lawn while secretly admiring her flowers. So when she noticed me that afternoon, I expected the worst. Instead, she surprised me with kindness. The next morning, I walked nervously to her gate carrying a small basket of fresh oranges from the tree my wife and I had planted years ago. I knocked softly, unsure whether I should even be there. Mrs. Eleanor welcomed me with a warm smile that immediately erased my fear. She thanked me for the oranges and invited me into her garden. For the first time, I stepped through the wooden gate that had fascinated me for so long. Up close, the garden felt even more extraordinary. Every flower had its own place. Tiny painted stones marked different sections. Old birdhouses hung from tree branches. Butterflies floated lazily through the air while gentle wind carried the sweet scent of jasmine. It felt less like a backyard and more like a living memory carefully protected from the outside world. As we walked slowly between flower beds, Mrs. Eleanor shared the story behind each section. One patch had been planted after her wedding. Another honored her parents. A large oak tree stood where her husband had proposed over 50 years earlier. Every blossom represented someone she loved or a moment she never wanted to forget. She explained that grief had once nearly destroyed her too, but planting something new each time she experienced loss reminded her that endings were never the whole story. Her words settled deep inside me. For months, I had been trying to escape memories because they hurt too much. She had spent decades preserving hers because they kept love alive. Over the following weeks, I began helping her in the garden. At first, I simply carried watering cans or pulled weeds. Soon I learned how to prune roses without damaging them, how different flowers needed different amounts of sunlight, and how patience mattered more than perfection. The work was slow, quiet, and surprisingly healing. For the first time since my wife's passing, entire afternoons slipped by without the crushing weight of loneliness sitting on my shoulders. Mrs. Eleanor never forced conversations. Sometimes we worked for hours without speaking. Other times she shared stories about her husband, her children who now lived far away, and the mistakes she wished she could undo. Eventually, I found myself telling stories I hadn't spoken aloud since the funeral. I laughed while remembering vacations. I cried while describing my wife's final days. Somehow the flowers seemed to make every painful memory a little easier to carry. As summer slowly turned into autumn, neighbors began noticing the changes in me. I smiled more often. I stopped avoiding community gatherings. Even my neglected backyard started blooming again as Mrs. Eleanor patiently taught me how to create my own small garden. She insisted that every person deserved a place where hope could quietly grow. Then one chilly October morning, I noticed something was wrong. Mrs. Eleanor wasn't outside. One day became 2. Then 3. Concerned, I knocked on her front door. She answered slowly, looking far weaker than I had ever seen her. She admitted she had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition months earlier but hadn't wanted anyone to worry. The doctors recommended surgery, though they couldn't promise success. For a moment, I felt the same helpless fear I had experienced when my wife became ill. But this time, I refused to stand by doing nothing. Without telling her, I visited neighbors throughout the community. I shared everything Mrs. Eleanor had quietly done for others over the years. People remembered flowers she had delivered after funerals, vegetables she had donated to struggling families, handmade bouquets she had left anonymously on lonely doorsteps. One by one, everyone wanted to help. The following weekend, nearly the entire neighborhood gathered in her garden. Some repaired broken fences. Others planted fresh flowers. Children painted colorful signs with messages of hope. Local musicians played soft songs beneath the oak tree while families prepared meals for her freezer. By sunset, the lonely garden had become filled with laughter, gratitude, and love. When Mrs. Eleanor stepped outside and saw dozens of people waiting for her, tears streamed down her face. She had spent years quietly caring for everyone else without expecting anything in return. Now that kindness had found its way back home. Before the surgery, she handed me a small notebook filled with handwritten notes, sketches of flowers, and memories connected to every plant in the garden. She asked me to continue caring for it no matter what happened. Holding that notebook felt like receiving the greatest responsibility of my life. Thankfully, weeks later, the surgery was successful. Recovery was slow, but every afternoon she sat on her porch watching me work among the flowers she loved so deeply. Sometimes she smiled proudly when I planted something exactly the way she had taught me. Other times she gently corrected my mistakes, reminding me that gardens, much like people, always offered another chance to grow. Years have passed since that unforgettable afternoon when she caught me looking over the fence. The garden continues to bloom through every season, but its greatest gift was never the flowers themselves. It was the reminder that loneliness begins to lose its power the moment someone chooses kindness over suspicion. One simple invitation transformed 2 broken lives into something unexpectedly beautiful. Before we reach the ending, I have one heartfelt request for you. Please leave a comment and tell us, have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that changed your life forever? Your story might inspire someone reading the comments today. Mrs. Eleanor often says that flowers bloom because someone believes they will. I think people are much the same. Sometimes all a hurting heart needs is one person willing to open a gate instead of building a higher fence. I went searching for a beautiful garden, but what I found was something far more valuable, a reason to believe that healing is possible, that love never truly disappears, and that hope often arrives from the house right next door. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kind Heart Stories for more emotional journeys that remind us how powerful kindness, compassion, and second chances can truly be. Thank you for watching, and may your own heart always find a garden where hope continues to bloom.